Yeah, so I'm really glad that we're going to do this topic finally. It occurred to me a couple a couple months ago, when there was this minor scandal involving one of the major video game slash nerd culture conventions that we have here in the States called PAX.
Right,
And
yeah, yeah.
a friend of mine who is a video game producer, he he was the one, he actually was writing a long essay about it that I helped him edit. And that's how I got the idea for this podcast, that because, podcast Device and Fire has branched out into basically all things, nerddom, if you will, all things fandom, thanks to Bastards and Vassals, that this is a very pertinent topic to us because there are so many women who are in the Song of Ice and Fire fandom, and women's issues, feminist issues are part of the meta narrative of the Game of Thrones. Uh,
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how qualified I am to talk about it because I think Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire is the only fandom like that I'm really in. Like I play video games,
mhm.
but I don't go to conventions or anything. I don't really frequent message boards for video games that much. Or I literally just play video games. That's my sort of as far as I go into it. But like yeah, like A Song of Ice and Fire is the only thing, the sort of geeky thing that I'm like really into. Um, but I read a bit about it in the last couple of days, and the other sort of, and I think you're talking about the PAX East like Dick Wolves things. Is that
Yes,
right?
that
Yeah.
is what sort of got my attention first, and then I just started sort of digging into the issue more.
Mm, yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's stuff that I never really thought about because it has always been presented as this is the way it is. And if you are a girl, if you are a woman involved in fandom, involved in these nerdy pursuits, well, you just have to deal with the sexism and the female characters that have like two watermelons strapped to their chest, for breasts, and
Yeah.
it's like you don't have a sense of humor. You don't like rape jokes. Oh, just get over it. That's the way, growing up, I was into anime and video games and things like that, and you're just basically told this is just the way it is. And
Yeah, it's really fascinating to read it. It's like so intense. Like it's almost like this little microcosm of like, sexism and misogyny and patriarchy in sort of a subculture.
yeah,
Um, and
and
you see it not just in the actions of fan groups, but as you say, in the actual material itself. And I guess
yes.
they sort of feed off each other. Like people, men see the objectification of women in comics and video games and things like that. And I guess that just reverberates into the way they treat them in fan communities. Like, if a girl comes to a Comic Con convention, she's there for either to be sexualized, but if she comes with like a sense of agency or anything, she's, immediately her motivations are questioned. She has to prove her credentials and all those things.
Yeah, if she has the temerity to not be a size zero and not walk in the Princess Leia metal bikini, basically, and it's not even trying to be one of the guys. It's that's part of it too. Like, how dare you try to be one of us? There it is in a nutshell. We don't want to be. I'm talking like female nerds in general. We're not there to be one of the guys. We're just there to like the thing that we all like, and somehow
Exactly.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's yeah. So you know what, I guess we can sort of call that the cold open for the podcast. I'll go ahead and do the introduction. So hi, this is Julia, also known as No True Lady on the message boards, and I also run my own Hannibal Tumblr and podcast, which is Suits and Madness, which you can find on Tumblr and on iTunes. And I'm also joined by
Duncan or Valkyrist on the forums.
Awesome. And we may or may not be joined later by Bina 007 and Alias, but we shall see. They've had things come up, but well, I think you and I can just definitely just jump in here. That's what I always say when I'm podcasting. Let's just jump in here.
Just jump
Uh,
straight into it.
yes. So I put together a little bit of an outline that turned into a bit of a rant on my part because I have a very hard time separating myself from these issues because, as I already said, I grew up with this stuff. I grew up dealing with it as a girl who was interested in quote unquote non-girly things. And now that so many of us have come of age, are now in our 20s and 30s, are now all talking to each other about our experiences growing up, and even now as parts of fandom, it turns out we've all had the same experience, and all that experience has been shitty.
Mm.
Um, uh, so before we start talking about the specifics, just want to remind everyone today we're talking about feminism and nerd culture and what it means to be a woman in the nerdy fandoms, whether that be video games, certain movies, certain books, certain TV shows, just lots of different works of fiction that have traditionally sort of been the purview of men and not necessarily women. Um, so what I have here on the outline is just talking about how all these things have suddenly burst into the mainstream. They've come into their own. They've come out of the shadows. It's no longer, you got The Simpsons in Australia, right? You have that as a cultural
Yeah,
touchstone. Yeah,
I love The Simpsons. Well, the first 10 seasons anyway.
yeah,
After
yeah,
that, it stopped after that.
yeah. I keep on forgetting that it's even still on TV. But the comic book guy, who's just this very condescending loser, who sort of his only badge of accomplishment in life is knowing all these, random facts about fictional characters, and otherwise, and then he often ends his little tirades by admitting that he's miserable and has no life. That's
Yeah,
that's sort of what when people think of comic books and movies like the Avengers in the past, that's what they thought of, but now it's become a more popular thing that anyone can like, and Game of Thrones has definitely proven that. It's people call it, it's Sopranos plus Lord of the Rings, but even those two works are very complex. It seems like anything that you can get drawn into is now considered nerdy, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Although I see it more as The Wire and Lord of the Rings, more about society
Yeah.
than sort of psychology. But yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that never. I have to admit, I've never seen The Wire. I hear it mentioned so often.
It's
Of
surprisingly like if you I don't know if you see Game of Thrones a certain way as this really interesting construction of a society and seeing all these different institutions and the people that operate them and how individual morality is compromised by institutions, then you'll probably like The Wire.
huh. Well, I'm sure it's something that
It's
I can
really great. I
find.
mean, like even if you don't like Game of Thrones, The Wire is considered the best show on TV ever made. So definitely check
Hmm.
it out.
Hmm. I have so many things on the pile, but anyway, to get back to our topic at hand,
Sorry,
it's okay. No, no, no. Uh,
derailing.
yeah, well, that's nerdiness. That right there is getting passionate about something and wanting to share it. So yeah, and I think part of the popularity, the newfound popularity of nerdy things is that um, they've become legitimate art forms. Video games, animation, fantasy, and sci-fi as literature have really come into their own and are now considered like they're not something that we have to hide anymore. But we now have this uh, flip side of it, that sort of the entrenched people are not happy about the new fans. And this is something I actually encountered when I first started getting into the Game of Thrones fandom and started listening to the podcast of Ice and Fire. And I don't want to rag on Mimi. However,
Yeah,
I have to point out that there was during as the show was really becoming popular, that she definitely had some rants about get out of my fandom. That was what it came down to. Either read the books, i.e., prove that you're a true fan, or GTFO. And she
yeah,
was really mad, and she was tired of people pinging her and being and basically saying, I've just discovered this wonderful thing. I know you love it too. Let's talk about it. Or at least, I mean,
mm,
that's my interpretation, but it just seemed like she was so frustrated. She was so angry with people sending her photos of, the actors, in character, of news about what was going on the set, of this and that. And uh, to an extent, it is frustrating for you to have already been involved in something for years and then have someone discover it for the first time. And it's like, okay, now I have to. endure them, learning all these things that I've known for so long. But at the same time, it's like, so what? How is that a
Yeah,
problem?
I try and think about how I would react because I came to the series through the show as well.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking like, what if I had started reading this series in 1996 and had this little personal thing that only I and a couple other people knew about and was so passionate about, and then all of a sudden it merges with the popular culture because I think there is this very hipsterish kind of mentality
Hmm.
where if
Hmm.
something becomes uh, popular or co-opted by popular culture, it suddenly becomes insubstantial. Like there's very this elitist thing, like this intellectual elitism, maybe that this is a special thing for us because we know about it because we're passionate about it. But once it becomes popular, it's not the same. It's not as rich or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm not
and
sure where the mentality comes from, but I think part of it is that.
I think it's a little bit of a tribal thing, if you want to look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, this idea of just, we want to identify, our special group and think of ourselves as standing out in some way, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, and I've definitely have been guilty of that hipsterism. Sherlock stands out in my mind. I remember when it first came out in 2010, and I discovered it, and I thought it was this amazing thing, and then the fandom around it just exploded, and it was just
Well,
like,
people from the 19th century probably think you're a poser.
yeah. Well, but the thing is that Sherlock Holmes was wildly popular during when Doyle was writing the stories originally.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, and now it's funny because we will hopefully in a couple months be doing the Sherlock podcast because season 3 just got a premiere date for early January. But it seems like the show really hates its fans. It really,
Oh, does it?
I,
I
I,
haven't seen it. Yeah.
I feel like the show in season 2 became self-aware and put in a lot of nods to the way the fans react to the show, and it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't a very positive light. It
Ah.
so, but you know what? We're getting off topic again. Um, so going back to the entrenched fans, the existing fans not enjoying this influx of new fans, that's where I've sort of began my analysis of the backlash against women in geek culture, um, and just this sort of reaction to women coming into a culture that has traditionally been dominated by men, and where women only really existed as sex objects or token characters, but were definitely never seen as equals or participants or even as sort of like real people. Women traditionally uh, have had the roles of the sorceress, the evil queen, the ethereal
Mm.
princess who needs to be saved. And even as the trope moved towards making her a warrior, she was always presented in a very sexualized way. The men got the full plate armor; she's running around in a metal bikini.
Mm,
That
yeah.
sort of thing. Um,
Yeah. One of the other things is I don't know if you've watched Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency YouTube channel. She's done a
yes.
series of videos on
Hmm.
representations of women in video
Hmm.
games, and one of the things she talks about is the way there's this kind of binary opposition between the way men are depicted in video games and the way women are depicted in video games. So the man is the character, the player, the avatar
Yes.
for the gamer. So he's the subject of the game, and the women is almost universally depicted as the object, the
Yes.
thing that has to be rescued, the damsel in distress, the object that sort of moves the gameplay and the plot forward. So even in the most simplistic kind of narratives of video games, say Mario, for example, where Princess Peach is captured, there is this sort of at the very conception, the infancy of video games, there's this setup of uh, active male subject and passive female object, and I think you can see that reverberating through like decades afterwards of video games, and it becomes a lot more violent in more recent video games where you have this kind of what people call women in refrigerators, where a male
Yes.
character will be motivated to commit horrible, bloody revenge because their woman, their wife or their daughter or something will be horribly tortured and killed. So again, it's using it. Women have no agency in these games; they're just used as a prop to motivate the actions of the man. So I think you can see that women being used as sex objects or just objects in general, sort of reverberating into the fandoms.
Yes, that initial dynamic that has really always been there um, from the beginning. I mean, if you want to go back to Tolkien as, the person who took a lot of these old Germanic and Norse myths and morph them into the fantasy conventions as we know them. The elves are archers and they look this way. The dwarves use axes and they look that. He really sort of established that. Um, Even then, Tolkien has a huge woman problem, as we would say it today, and that is why in the movies they had to give Arwen and Eowyn and Galadriel a lot more active roles, even though that changed the story substantially because they
Did,
weren't doing anything.
didn't I can't. It's been a while since I read the books, but didn't Eowyn, the king's daughter, wasn't she a soldier in the books as well? Didn't she pose as a soldier? I think that might have been a sort of saying something about women's roles.
But
Didn't she dress up as a soldier or something?
I don't remember, but what I do remember is that it was she wasn't Theoden's daughter. She was the niece. She and her
Oh,
brother
sorry,
were the
the
niece
niece.
and
Yeah, yeah,
nephew.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but the thing is that in the movie, I think it's implied that she then becomes the queen of their kingdom, but in the book, her brother takes over. But I think, and I'm sure Tolkien fans can correct me, but. Um, I think it was that they switched it because she was the older one, so it was um, they changed it so that she became the queen of the Rohan. Oh, it's been so long since I've watched these movies. What's
Yeah,
wrong with me?
no,
Uh,
I'm trying to think. I'm You're absolutely right. There's a lot of sort of archetypal, traditional, conservative characterizations in Lord of the Rings, but I think I can remember from the book she does take on a very. I'm pretty sure she dresses up as a soldier, like she does in the in the movies. She like her uncle forbids her to fight, but she
mhm.
dresses up and takes Mary along, and she ultimately kills the Witch King of Angmar, the king of the Nazgul.
So
So I think even within this very conservative 1950s fantasy story, there is a bit of kind of female breaking out and females
mhm.
kicking ass. So I don't know. I give Tolkien props for that, even if some
Yeah.
of his other characterizations are a bit
Yeah, but
general.
but but even then, to fully bring that story into the 20th century, they had to give Eowyn a lot more to do. Not Eowyn,
Although
Arwen. Yeah,
they kind of brought her into this love triangle with Arwen, so I don't know. It's kind of a
yeah,
I don't know if it's entirely positive, but yeah.
hmm. Yeah. I
But
was
I guess that was in the books, yeah. Yeah,
I'm just checking because I forgot if in the books that she's still if Eowyn still killed the Witch King or not. Um,
yeah, no, she does. I'm
okay.
pretty sure she says, "I am no, it, it's a woman that stands before you" or something. Yeah, I'm
Yes, that's
99%
right.
sure that's how, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
happens.
in that in and of itself, no man can kill me. Ha ha. I
Yeah,
am
it's
no
like a
man.
loophole. It's like a legal loophole.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I have
So
to
yeah,
I
yeah.
do have to backtrack a little and say that Tolkien did good there. That was, but I mean even then that has sort of become a trope in and of itself.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Um, let's see, and then I think just to stay on the Tolkien thread here, how they have created for the Hobbit movies, Tauriel, who is a Mirkwood elf, and they just created her. Um, uh, for the movies because they said they needed more women. They just did, and I remember I'm looking back on the first Hobbit movie. The only woman you really see is Galadriel. I think there are a
So
few.
they've
Hmm?
yeah, so they've gone from one to two, which is yeah, that is more. I guess that's fifty
Yeah,
percent more.
and the fan reaction to her has been very negative. But now there's a
Oh,
backlash
okay.
to the backlash. So that's um,
So it evens out.
yeah, and I think it was under the guise of, how dare they, alter the original story and create this character, and why didn't we get to see Tom Bombadil, and it's like
Oh my God, they're never gonna forget Tom Bombadil. They're never gonna
yes.
forgive that.
I
He
heard.
couldn't be in the movie. There's no way they could have portrayed him in the
Yeah,
movie.
well, I actually, some friends of mine, we were talking about that the other day at dinner, and they said that they had heard a rumor that Robin Williams was in talks to play Tom Bombadil, but they decided not to put the character in.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Well, there is a series of short stories I think with Tom Bombadil, so
yeah,
maybe they could do that. I don't know.
yeah, some sort of like a little web series thing.
But
Um,
like the size of Lord of the Rings, you cannot have the Hobbit sit down and drink honey wine for like half an hour. It's like the whole Tom Bombadil section. I don't think people realize how long and boring it is.
yeah.
Sorry,
Um,
that's another podcast.
Yes, yes, it is. But I mean, but we actually can use that to sort of compare the I mean, like just all this stuff under the guise of canon rage, if you will, nerd rage, and then
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
and then what? But then what is the actual problem that people have with insert? Like, I kind of wonder if they had just created a male elf buddy for Legolas, that if people would have less issues with that. I can't help but wonder. But
For what? For who? Why do?
for Legolas's character, he's
Oh,
the
Legolas. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's this, it's like, how do you pronounce these characters' names? Um, uh, yeah. If they had just like created or like grabbed some male elf for him to just like be his buddy, if
Mm,
people would have less issues with that.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there's kind of an issue that people have with having just one female character in a
Hmm.
band of men. I mean, they call it the Smurfette kind of principle or something, where it'll
Yeah.
just be one woman surrounded by men. It's this grossly disproportionate kind of male to female ratio compared to, there's supposedly 50% of each, but we only ever have one character,
Hmm.
one female character in most of these in these series. And I think it connects to the Bechdel test. You probably know that one?
Yes, yes. The
Yeah,
idea
it's
of whether or
this
not.
idea that, yeah,
Oh, you go ahead and explain
women,
it.
well, no, there's kind of very few movies or TV shows pass the Bechdel test, and it's the idea that there has to be more than one woman in a story. The women have to talk to each other, and they have to talk to each other about something other than men. And so many movies and TV shows fail this. I think Sex and the City failed it for like a season and a half or something like that because they're
Well,
talking about nothing but relationships and men.
yeah, that was the show, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's not necessarily a condemnation. I mean, not every movie, like a movie like Glengarry Glen Ross, it
hmm,
doesn't suit it, I guess. But it's just showing that movies as a whole are so male centered, I guess, and male
hmm,
dominated, and women are always the other. They're always tangential to the plot. They're always objects to motivate or interest the male subject.
yeah, and I think that's what's great about the the Tauriel character is that she's not there to motivate. I like, okay, we already know that she's going to be a love interest for Legolas, but it's less like.
But isn't that like objectifying her, giving depth to Legolas's character by giving him a love interest?
I think.
I guess we'd have to see the actual portrayal. It might be really interesting,
Well,
but that's kind of what it seems on the surface.
my understanding is that it's more about how the elves have their own hierarchy, and that there's these high elves, which is what Legolas is descended from. His father, the Bitch King, yeah, Thrandy,
What?
Thranduil. He's played by Lee Pace, and he's just this very, very uh, uh, stuck up
Oh,
elf.
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
been so long since I've read The Hobbit. I really liked it though, but yeah. I don't know
yeah.
why they need to make three movies though. That seems a bit
Well,
self-indulgent.
everyone has said that, but at the same time, it seems like there is enough material there that it's that if they had put it into one movie, we'd all be bitching about the opposite. It was too rushed. It was too long. Oh, they should have spent more time with such and such, and I didn't care about them at all. And where was that character? And where was this character? So it's one of those no-win situations.
I guess.
Yeah. Um, because there's absolutely no way they could have worked in everything into one movie.
Yeah, but I think part of making a movie and adapting material is knowing what to cut out and, knowing that they're different mediums. Like you're not gonna fit everything in a book to a movie. So I guess they've done the ultimate, like, they've accommodated fans absolutely by making three movies and
Mhm.
managing to fit everything and add a bunch more stuff. I guess Game of Thrones fans would love that if each season was like 30 episodes and they'd fit every single conversation and every single feast into it. But I'm not sure if that would have worked as like a cohesive, exciting narrative.
Well, and also there's budgetary issues and the availability of actors because so many of them have, at this point, other projects going on that they have to work around. And
Sure, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I would love for each season to be 13 episodes. I think that that would solve so many problems. But we're okay. We're
yeah. That would be good.
yeah, but okay. We got to refocus here. I mean, obviously, we could, you and I could just like talk for hours, which we're
Yes,
gonna do. Um,
so many tangents.
yes. So okay, now get back to my feminist rage. Okay, got to get back in touch with it. All right.
Unleash.
Yes. So I mean, you would definitely agree that it is this unfortunate convention that women are objects in so many works of fiction, that they aren't equals, that they're not human, basically.
Yes, absolutely. It's not good. I mean, I guess maybe I don't feel it as intensely as if I was a woman, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see it at least and say, yeah, it's not good and it's boring. Like, we need more variety, I guess. It'd be more interesting for art if we got more perspectives and more, not just women, but just different minorities and different like, sexual orientations, just more diversity. If we just see men, men, men over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
this male struggle, this male psychological turmoil displayed over and over again. It just gets boring.
Yeah, and that's been the dominant narrative for so very long. And it's funny that now that it's being challenged, this pushback that we're seeing is it's amazing. I mean, it's like you just kind of have to stand there and just be like, wow, why is there such um, objection to more diversity and whatnot?
Yeah, and not just objection and this unwillingness to let girls into the sort of boys' club, but this really vicious kind of misogynistic attacks, like
Yes.
the Dick thing, where people. I mean, I guess we can explain that later.
Yeah.
But the example I had with Anita Sarkeesian
Hmm.
was her Kickstarter campaign to start
Yes.
this series of videos looking at female representations in video games, and even the proposition that there could be sexism in games, or that she could be looking at that and criticizing video games. It created this unbelievable campaign of like death threats, and she
Hmm.
received threats to be attacked and raped. And there was a video, a little like flash game created where you could beat up Anita Sarkeesian. So like, it's not even trolling at this point. It's like a cyber mob, like this highly coordinated attack um, to bring her down. And that organization is crazy. It's not just like impulse sort of sexist attacks. It's this really highly organized thing. Like, don't any of these people stop and look at each other and say, what are we doing to this woman? Like, why are we doing this? Where is this hatred coming from? It's like, I think it speaks to something really dark
Yeah,
that
and
isn't
really,
really, yeah, hasn't been exposed, but it's just kind of simmering under the surface.
yes, it's dark, it's deep seated, it's the way so many of us have been brought up. This way of keeping women and other minorities, marginalized groups in their place by
Mm.
I think it's this very subtle Pavlovian response that is ingrained
But
even
yeah,
among people who are like me, who were raised by more liberal minded parents, that I still, when I was younger, I would still have this response of, yeah, what's that woman thinking walking in there dressed that way, and it's like, wait a minute, now that I've become a mother, now that I have a son, and I don't want him to perpetuate these awful attitudes and awful behaviors. Now I'm
mm.
really, really deeply analyzing it more than I have ever before in my life. Of like,
Yeah, I
wait,
think
yeah, but go ahead.
I think I think that's why it's important to see other people's perspectives portrayed in movies and pop culture. Like if all you see is the perspective of men, you're never going to be able to empathize with the positions of women and
Yeah.
other ethnicities.
Yeah, and not
Um,
just men. It's we see predominantly white men.
exactly, yeah, and oh, what was I going to say? Sorry, keep going.
Okay. So I think just talking about the very sort of scripted, angry reaction is a good jumping off point to talk about the fake geek girl myth or fake nerd
Yeah,
girl. And
yeah, yeah.
I couldn't really find where this be like what year it really began, but it's been around for a while, and it's this concept of a young woman, usually a young woman, who professes to have an interest in geeky or nerdy activities, but often also exhibits traditional feminine qualities like they're attractive, they like to wear makeup and stylish clothes, and they are then perceived as not being a true fan who is only there to get attention, to find a man, to promote themselves in some way, and it's seen as they're seen as an interloper, and they themselves are then objectified by nerd culture as being portrayed as this sort of bombshell with large breasts and a little waist, putting a game controller in their mouth suggestively, and it's just like this crazy circular. Oh, it's just it's there's so much to read into that, and then a woman who is not
Yeah,
convention.
it's
Yeah, I
you're
just
either damned if you do and damned if you
yes,
don't. If you
yeah,
come in acting like a sex object, or you come in, an attractive girl decides to cosplay and
hmm
go to a Comic Con convention, she's either leered at and sort of groped and made sort of snide or sort of comments about her, the way she looks by these people at these conventions, or if she's not attractive, she's made fun of.
hmm
Um, and but if she comes there just because she's a fan of something, she's her motivations are immediately questioned. So
yeah.
it's like there's no scenario in which girls can be accepted. There's like this kind of pushback in every single case.
Yes, yes, that's the conclusion I basically came through is it's a gatekeeping tool to keep women out. That there is literally no way that a woman can be acceptable to this sort of branch of nerd culture. Um,
Which is so bizarre because if you like, what's wrong if girls want to come and join your club? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, why would that offend you? Maybe shouldn't you be happy if like other people are coming to your fandom and enjoying the things you've been enjoying for so long? Like, I don't understand it. I guess the hipster sort of thing sort of plays into a little bit. Like,
yeah.
these people are interloping on something that you've been passionate about and that you've dedicated so much time to in private, and now all of these people are coming on board because it's suddenly popular. Like,
hmm
the Avengers. Maybe you've followed the Avengers for decades, and now just because a movie with oh God, what the hell's his name? Tony Stark guy. Uh,
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. is in it now. They see all these popular teenage girls coming in and sort of invading and transgressing on their space and tainting it with their popular culture or whatever. Um, the other thing I thought maybe was this notion that, I don't know, maybe geeks have been somewhat victimized and kind of marginalized in
hmm
terms of high school and all those things. And now they see, I don't know, now that sort of geek culture has become popular culture, especially with comic book movies and superhero movies, they see the popular kids sort of jumping on board and trying to join the nerdy kids for the first time, and they don't like that, and they've kind of externalized all of this anger and bitterness at being marginalized for so long. Maybe I don't know.
I think that those are definitely both very probable. I know, speaking as someone who was bullied a lot throughout my schooling and didn't have a lot of friends and found a lot of solace in things like Batman and Sailor Moon and other works of fiction, that suddenly discovering that people who I would have identified as my tormentors liked it too, that did piss me off. It was like, what, I suffered for this, and now you get to just walk in and like it.
Mm.
Yeah, that, because you get picked on, and then you find a thing that you like, and then you get picked on for liking it. I mean, children are just terrible to each other, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than watching the hive mind, watching kids just gang up on each other, and it just because their little brains are not fully formed in some kind of weird, very primal impulses are just are present, and but they don't know how to what they are and how to control them, and it's just like you see the weak one in the herd, and there's this weird impulse to cull them. It's like they're bringing us all down, and
Yeah, yeah.
or the need for the scapegoat, the need for the other to help the group to be more cohesive. There's so many different ways of analyzing this, but the conclusion that we need to come to is it's wrong and it needs to stop. It has no place in today's world. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
That's right. I guess it's just if I guess we've got to find out, I guess, where it stems from.
Well,
But I guess if you sort of just, if people just kind of accept it and get over it and um, let people do what they want to do and just respect people and let women come and join fandoms. I mean, I say join, but they've probably always been there.
yeah, exactly.
It's only that they're coming. It's just more visible now that there's things like Comic Con and comic book conventions for all these people to mingle in real life. Within a couple of years, people will just get over it. Like, it's like anytime new people come to a thing, there's
Hmm.
always this immediate backlash.
Hmm.
But within a couple of years, nobody cares. It's so stupid. It's so immature.
Yeah, I mean, it will. I have confidence, but at the same time, the way for people to get over it is for people like us to discuss it and to demand people stop being dicks. You
Yeah,
know.
but I think another huge problem with this is the internet provides this anonymity. I can
Hmm.
never say that word,
Hmm.
and this lack of accountability, and that creates like I guess you'd call it sort of internet trolling culture, where people just attack just for the pure joy of it, just for the joy of stirring up anarchy and making people feel horrible
But
and
even
just
that,
externalizing all their bitterness. And like, how do you even fight that? Like, how do you even address that? Like, it's fine if two people, if you and me can agree on this thing, but we're
hmm.
sort of preaching to the choir here. Like, that's not going to address the actual perpetrators of all this horrible nonsense. Like, even just sort of researching this topic in the last day or so, it's
Hmm.
amazing to see how many people hate feminism and how many people still hate Anita Sarkeesian and how she's had to disable comments on her YouTube video because she'll just get swamped by people just abusing her. So like I don't know, like on one side we can say yeah, eventually people will just get over it, and as long as we sort of just keep talking about it and keep trying to spread the message of tolerance, it'll get over. But at the same time, you've just got such a huge force you're battling against, and unlike say in other situations where people were resistant to interlopers coming into their little group, the internet provides that lack of accountability that people can just be assholes for the sake of it. Like, how do you even fight against that kind of anarchist mentality?
But even that is being challenged because since there is, um, there really is no anonymity on the internet. If you know what you're doing, you can find out who someone is. And lots of people know how to do that. So we have some pretty high profile instances of people who are tracked down and are called out, and then their lives get ruined, which I
Well,
think is
I think
great.
you can
Yeah.
find out. I think you can maybe track down individuals, but
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to do that with a mob, like the mob that attacked Anita
Well,
Sarkeesian.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you can't really track
obviously.
down each individual person, especially. I mean, a lot of these people are coming from sites like 4chan, where there
Hmm.
isn't even like
There is no
an account
moderation.
to go to.
Yeah.
There's just they're just people typing randomly on the internet. Like
Hmm. Well,
the the level of organization that they have compared to the ability to track any of them down is just kind of disproportionate. So
and
I
that
don't know how to
will
address it.
that will always be there to an extent, but the thing is that those of us who feel this way can use those same tools too. We can come in and present our opinion and engage. I mean, it's sort of like, well, which who's going to shout louder? They're the ones who are shouting loudest right now.
Mm.
Shouldn't we shout back? I mean, You know, there
Yeah,
comes,
I should say, as not as sort of depressing as I'm
yeah.
getting myself sounding, the Anita Sarkeesian Kickstarter campaign actually raised 25 times what its goal was. So obviously there was a backlash to the backlash,
Hmm.
and there was heaps of support for her in spite of all this really negative criticism.
Yeah, I think the trend that's emerging is that someone will come out and say something quote unquote controversial, like Anita, and then we get the backlash, which is basically this very, very deeply ingrained uh, rote reaction that we're quote unquote supposed to have in order to keep people in their place, certain people in their place. And then people see that reaction and start to say, wait a minute, that's not right. So then we get the backlash to the backlash, so to speak. Um, so I think people are starting to become aware that we have these scripts, that we have these almost like these reactions that have been implanted in us by society of the way we're supposed to react. You know, like the whole issue with rape culture of, you know, we hear a young woman has been raped. And immediately we say, what was she wearing? What was she doing? What was she drinking? Who was she with? Instead of being
Mm,
like, why did that idiot rape her? Why did that fucker do that? We immediately look at,
yeah.
you know, with that has been ingrained so deeply that it's like kind of brainwashing. It's a kind of conditioning. You know, we get the stimulus and we react the way that we are told to react because
Yeah,
it.
I think it ties it back to this whole subject object thing. Men see women as belonging to certain spaces like the kitchen and home
Mhm,
and the domestic setting. And once they transgress places like the streets,
mhm,
places where, it's dangerous, masculine spaces like that, there's this position that they're almost inviting violence upon them. And if they transgress male spaces like Comic Con conventions and geek cultures and
mhm.
fandoms, that they're inviting attack, they're inviting suspicion because this isn't their place,
Yeah.
which is so sort of marginalized. It completely gives subjectivity to the male and says they're the center of the universe. Every space is controlled by them,
Mhm.
and the women have their little compartment that they belong to. But once they venture outside that, they're attacked and they're inviting this criticism upon them. It's
Yeah.
just unbelievably infuriating.
Yeah, it is horrible. It's all about keeping, the current society in place. You know, that's why we have mores. That's why we have rules. That's why we have attitudes about gender roles and whatnot, is to keep things functioning as they are. But it's like we've reached this point as a species where stepping outside of these narrowly defined roles isn't going to jeopardize the harvest. It isn't going to jeopardize the whole survival. Okay, that's where I personally believe so many things, racism, stereotypes, gender roles, that's where they come from, is this need for survival. We have to keep women doing these things and men doing these other things in order for the tribe to survive yet another season. And if women stop doing those things, it jeopardizes everyone's well-being and ultimately the survival of the tribe. That's where I think it stems from. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah, that might be the case. This kind of evolutionary instinct to certain
Yes.
roles, but I also think men are just programmed to be more dominant, like a more aggressive and assertive, and sort of cling to dominance in any sort of arena. Like
Hmm.
I don't know, it just seems to be this impulsive thing. Maybe it is an evolutionary thing, but the default setting seems to be, all right, men take charge of this situation, and women have to be protected,
Hmm.
and they have to keep their place, otherwise they'll be attacked, and we have to keep them in this little
Yes.
box.
And yet,
And if
I was going to say, and yet men are so freaking threatened by a woman coming into their precious little Comic Con and saying,
yeah,
hey, I like
oh no,
Batman
that's the
too.
ultimate hypocrisy. The
Yeah.
idea that the men are victims, that the women are preying upon them, that these women are dressing up as geeks,
Hmm.
as costumes, and like, oh, there was this. I don't know if you read the. I put a link on the thread.
Hmm.
There was a guy, a comic book artist,
Let me go look.
who had this whole Facebook rant about what was his name? Tony Harris, comic book artist, put this insane rant on Facebook. I'll see if I can go to it now. But he
Okay.
was just
Did he put
Yeah,
on?
he's just talking about he's just this enormous rant of like unintelligible capitals letters talking about women. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh,
What
I'm not
page?
going to read the whole thing. It's long. It's
Hmm.
just at the very end. It's
Did you put it on the first page or the second page of the thread?
second page.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Let me get there. Let me get there. Um, okay. This would be a good time for listeners to go get themselves a soda. Uh,
Well, we can cut this out.
yeah, I can't, I can't seem to find the link. Oh
It's
wait, here it is. Here,
there's
wait,
a big
here
picture
it
of it.
is. Yeah, okay, here it is. So is he the one? Okay, here. This is good. Uh,
So it's long. I don't know if you want to read the whole
well,
thing.
High Noon at Veldcon. Well, I like this. Oh, I think this is yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like what do you really think we are going to do to you,
But
men?
it just includes all of those things that like you're not as attractive as you think you are, and just this just victimized sort of rage,
Hmm.
this bitterness turned outwards against women.
Hmm.
Like I don't know if he's had something happen in his life that sort of invented this, but yeah, it's really
Yeah.
weird.
Oh,
Um,
oh no.
so he says, "Hey, quasi pretty hot not girl, you are pathetic. You're more pathetic than real nerds." Who you secretly think are really pathetic, but we are onto you. Some of us are aware that you are ever so average on an everyday basis, but you have a couple of things going your way. So it's obviously this whole position that women are coming to Comic Con and dressing up because they want attention and they want to be ogled at by nerds, and I don't know, it's just weird.
Yeah. Well, I think also there's this deeper understanding that maybe on some subconscious level, these men understand that the women are not there for them, and that really pisses them off. It's like you don't want
Ah, okay,
you
yeah.
don't want like I mean like the whole obsession with the Thor movies over Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth, and I can definitely see a guy like this Tony effing Harris, being like, you guys are only going to see this movie because you like them. Yeah, we do. And you know what? In real life, both of those actors are pretty cool dudes, especially Tom Hiddleston, who was raised with sisters, and it seems like every time he's encountered by a female fan, he is gracious, he is thankful, he is charming, he and he's a nice guy. Is it really so hard to be
But
nice
it's
to
like
people?
the hypocrisy is amazing. It's like that's exactly why a bunch of nerds go to see, any sexualized,
Mhm.
fetishized women in video
Yeah.
games or movies, or I mean, Lara Croft in the latest. I mean, any Tomb Raider. I mean, I sort of like
Well,
Tomb Raider,
the
but she's so clearly fetishized and made to be an object of the of the male gaze. It's like I mean, his whole rant is talking about women's body and
mhm.
their sexual like worth or their attractive worth. So the idea that it's just bizarre.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like they
it's
can't even recognize their own hypocrisy. It's
well,
weird.
this is also tangential to rape culture in that this notion that women are temptresses, that we are coming in to, ruin a man's life and give you blue balls. And it's like I had no idea that A, men couldn't control their thoughts and feelings and bodies, and B, that my mere existence is offensive.
Yeah, I mean the notion of I guess rape culture, the idea that women are inviting this upon themselves is equally well, not equally, but it's also offensive to men because it says that men are so incapable of controlling their own actions that they're just you know, just predatory creatures that will
Yeah.
just attack any exposed flesh. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a really nihilistic view of both genders, but
Exactly.
obviously
Yeah.
far more destructive for the woman.
Hmm. Um,
I also found an article which kind of vents a lot of my frustration in a way
okay.
more articulate way. It's called "The Fake Geek Girl Has to Go." It's on Tumblr. I don't know who the author is, but
Hmm.
I can give you the link. But part of it, I'll just read a little extract. It says, at the core of it all, for some insane reason, you are so threatened by the presence of women in your interests that you insult, you cajole, you harass, and you embarrass the rest of us who are just happy to share. You slam women who are attractive and cosplay as not real nerds. They're preying on us poor widow men's, and when you're not, when they're not as attractive as you'd like, you slam them for not meeting your standards, or you slam them for daring to give you, or sorry, for not daring to give you the time of day as you grope, harass, and hit on them. She's not there for you. Let that sink in, guys. She's not there for you. She's not dressing up for you. She's not interested in comics for you. She's not playing games for you. You are not the center of the universe. You never were, and you never should be. It's time to share your toys, guys. It's time to be more mature. It's time to drop the entitled attitude that insists our standards and our standards alone should be met. You do not hold the keys to the kingdom, for the kingdom has no lock. So yeah, it's a much longer piece than that, but that's
Yeah.
kind of
I
I like that.
I think I have read that one. I think at least I have I've come upon it before. Um, uh, yeah, I mean that says it right there. And this is I always reach a point with these sorts of topics where I just get enraged, where it's like I'm tired of trying to be logical and be
Yeah.
polite and be civil. It's like, no, I'm mad. You want to call me a bitch? Well, I'm going to call you an asshole. I
It's
mean,
like you're trying to argue with the Joker. There's just like no rational like way you just
yeah.
got to brought down to his level.
Yeah, well, I mean, also there comes a point of just absolute rage for me where I keep on reading these accounts of women going to conventions and being sexually assaulted, being harassed, being made to feel horrible for even
Mm.
wanting to be there, and um, just so many women I know who have been raped, been sexually assaulted,
Oh.
been made to feel like they're nothing, and to realize that my experience of have never having had that happen to me is the exception, not the rule. It's like, where does it stop? When? I'm so tired. I'm only 31 and I'm so tired. And I know things are better than it was for our parents and their parents, but it's still not good.
No,
um,
it's bad. Yeah, I guess just gotta keep. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
got to keep going on. Um,
I mean, yeah, it'll get better, I guess,
mhm,
slowly, slowly. I just, yeah, the frustration is how slowly it's gonna get, and it is like it does seem to be this special case with geek culture where it is this kind of it's been this echo chamber of men for so long
mhm,
that it
mhm,
hasn't transformed and become as tolerant as, or I shouldn't say tolerant, but as inclusive as other areas, I guess, areas of sort of public discourse. It's been men and this boys' club for so long that when women do try to join in, there's this far more vicious backlash than you'd even like expect. Like you wouldn't even expect this from, like, obviously it's a caricature, but you don't think of nerds as these horribly vicious creatures. You think of them as just this kind of awkward guys who would love the attention of girls. But yeah, it's weird.
yeah, yeah. It's like you're all complaining about how you don't have girlfriends, and then you say, "Oh, these women are only here to try to get our attention." Well, what do you want? Oh, you don't want us there at all. That's what it is. That's my
Well,
opinion. They don't want
I'm
women there at
wondering
all.
if it's I'm wondering if it started out as, oh great, all these girls are here. Let's go hit on them. Oh wait, they're not they're not responding to our advances. Screw them. They shouldn't be here. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's not very nice.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that is frustrating to an extent, knowing what it means to grow up, being lonely, not having a lot of friends, and then suddenly being like, hey, maybe I can get a boyfriend or a girlfriend or, whatever your inclination is, and then finding out that these people are just here for the thing that you're here for as well. I mean, yeah, I understand how what a letdown that can be. Get over it.
Mm.
That's
And it's still stuck in this no this conception of women as romantic, potentially romantic objects or sex objects. It's the
mhm,
idea that you can't treat them as equals, as friends, as uh, you know, comrades in a sort of fandom. They have to be pursued or ignored. If your pursuits are um, spurned, then they're not worth your time of day. It's like it is this whole binary thing that women can't be considered equals. I guess they can't be considered friends or part of the fandom. They have to be only seen in those romantic terms or those sexualized terms that I don't know, no, just some people in geek culture, it's obviously not everyone, but they just can't get their head around.
Yeah, and it's like if a woman turns you down, it's like you can't even just be like shrug and be like, oh, okay, move on to the next thing. It has to be like, no, all women are awful, and and you know they take our children away from us and they drain our money, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I just all I said was, oh, I have a boyfriend. It's like I didn't even do anything to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I mean, they just need to grow up, I guess, just be
Yeah.
more mature. I mean, maybe another part of it is this kind of a bit of a arrested development, a bit of this kind of man-child obsession, people reliving their childhood and their nostalgia through comic books and
Hmm.
things like that, and not being able to grow past grow into adulthood in a way. I mean, I think you can still perfectly be enjoying things like that in your adulthood, but you still have, if you're going to be an adult, you still have to treat people as an adult. Even if you're going to enjoy things that you enjoyed in your childhood, you still have to grow up, I guess. Yeah, beyond that point. But maybe some people aren't.
Willing to do that. Yeah. Here, I found a good example. I'm looking at Tumblr right now, about this viciousness that women have to encounter, in geek culture. This is actually going back to Sherlock a little bit. The background of this is that after Sherlock became really popular, there's now an American equivalent called Elementary, which is on regular network television. And it's the same sort of reimagining of the Sherlock Holmes mythos, but they actually they did a good job of making it their own. From what I've never really seen it, but just looking into it a little bit, it seems like they really went in their own direction with it. Whereas the BBC Sherlock is much more of a, we're updating the original material, whereas
Mm.
Elementary is, here's the source material and we're going to take it in a different, yeah, so it's
Yeah,
different.
I think Lucy Liu plays like a female Watson, so they're
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
reconfiguring it a little bit. Yeah.
She's Jane Watson instead of John Watson. But
Mm.
the thing is that the people involved with Sherlock, including Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, they got their little noses out of joint over the fact that another show was daring to, like they were like, "Oh, you're riding our coattails," and it's like, okay, first of all, this stuff's in the public domain. Second
Yeah,
of
it's not.
all, second of all, if something's popular and people want to pay for it, there's nothing wrong with making money.
Yeah.
And I guess Martin Freeman did this interview where he got really bitchy about it and called Lucy Liu ugly. And it's like,
Oh,
what so now I actually
I
now
thought
have,
he was cool. I didn't
yeah,
know that.
exactly. Exactly. Look this up. It happened. I looked it up too. At first I was like, it's one of those things you just don't want to believe.
Yeah,
And
I
then
thought
you're
he was a
just
cool
like,
guy.
oh, you asshole. It's just like, really? So here, this is just from a random Tumblr user. So here's their little rant. People glorify men so much in society, even if they look like toenails, like literally. Martin Freeman looks like a literal hobbit and called Lucy Liu ugly and a dog, and y'all want to lick his asshole. Yet people pay people with cameras to follow Rihanna and Anne Hathaway around and try to take pictures of them with no makeup so they can call them ugly, and that's like so terrifying. That is literally terrifying. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and like paparazzi, I guess, trying to always catch that candid shot of like awkwardness or ugliness. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing of, how dare you not appear in public looking the way that we think you should look.
Yeah, it's this obsession with not only capturing, like, of sexualizing women, but then of
Punishing,
uglifying, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. Well, punishing them for, yeah, yeah. I think just it really comes down to is you don't want us here unless it's on these very specific terms,
And
and
it's continually tying women's worth to their body and their
hmm,
looks, and continually reasserting men's worth through their, I don't know, intellect and things like that.
exactly.
Like a man's worth isn't tied up into how hunky he looks. It's tied into his, other things. Obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, you can sexualize men, but that's not, there's a hundred other variations on why you would love a man. But
Mm.
women are, like, even just looking at like the women actors in Hollywood, like Meryl Streep is this complete anomaly. Most of the female actors in the successful female actors in Hollywood are just these amazingly beautiful glamour models. Yeah.
Yeah, and even the whole age issue. With the other fandom I'm really into, Hannibal. Um, the female actors on that show, as good as that show is, and as trope busting as it is, and they consciously made some of the characters female because they wanted more of a male female balance. Even then, it seems like the female actors are on average 10 years younger than the male actors. You know, this idea that a woman expires, she has an expiration date. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the two male leads, Hugh Dancy and Mads Mikkelsen. Hugh Dancy is in his late 30s. Mads Mikkelsen is in his late 40s, and then the female leads are like 26, 30, and 35.
Eh.
And to me, there's something like that. That's just off. Oh, Bina's here.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna add her to the call.
okay.
I clicked add to call, and please don't drop. Oh my God. And she has right now as her profile picture the Thor 2 poster. I love it.
Yeah.
You're
Hi
here.
guys.
Ooh,
Sorry for being an
hey.
hour late. That's really bad, isn't
That's
it?
all right.
No,
We were just
that's
talking about Thor.
yeah, because I see your current little avatar is the poster.
Absolutely. I have all the press. I have so many of the press release images and stuff. I can send you a zip file if you like.
Oh
If you're
well,
a Thor fangirl.
well, I actually am a Loki fangirl.
I can send you just the Loki stuff if you prefer.
Sure.
Really good high res massive images. There's a lot of the girls in my office who've been after those, I have to say.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about Tom Hiddleston and how awesome he seems to be as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's an older Tony, and they're always very charming. They're trained not to be sort of too arrogant, even though they are obviously like semi-royal. So they always have this charming humility about them.
Wait, so what? He's an old what? That's a term
An old Etonian. So he went to Eton, which is the school that Prince Harry and Tony went to. They have this amazing drama course. So lots of people went there, like the guy who's in Homeland, Damian Lewis.
Okay.
They spit out a lot of good actors, but they're all trained to be very self-effacing and very charming.
Okay, well, I thought that his accent was extremely posh.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because I was like, wait a minute, he sounds like he's in the freaking royal family. Why does he talk that way? Because I'm aware. My husband has some cousins who live in London, and I'm sort of aware of how the whole accent thing is very much tied to class. And one of the reasons why many people are rubbed the wrong way by Russell Brand is the fact that he sounds low class. Well,
Really, are people rubbed the wrong way by him? That's so sad. Yeah, no, but that said, Tom Hiddleston does sound about as posh as it's possible to be.
okay.
The only person who sounds posher than him is, like, not including the Queen, is the chick who plays, oh God, who's the girl that Jon Snow gets with, the wildling?
Rose Leslie.
Egret. Rose Leslie, yeah.
Rose Leslie. She grew up in a castle, though.
Really?
She sounds very posh.
Like a straight up castle.
She grew up in a straight-up castle in Scotland and then ended up being a maid on Downton Abbey.
Yeah, and then this wild character who's basically kind of like the Westerosi equivalent of a hill person, redneck.
Absolutely.
I love the Egret accent. Yeah, I much prefer it to her actual accent.
Yes, you know nothing.
That accent has never sounded sexy before. Like, northern accents have never sounded sexy before Egret.
Oh, I love it.
Jon Snow.
It's so good.
So we've already sort of covered most of the ground here.
Okay, cool.
But that's okay because you have the outline and actually I wanted to talk now about the God, it just sounds so stupid to say, the Dick Wolf controversy that happened at PAX East. So first of all, is Bina your real name?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, my name's Sabina, but yeah, Bina's the
Okay, so
nickname.
you go by Bina. All right, very good. I love how so many British people have like these very like you just sound like a Tolkien character, Sabina, and then it's like, oh, just call me Bina. Just call me, and I love that. All Americans, we're all secretly just totally nuts about British and Europeans, and it's because we threw you out so long ago and was like, no.
Yeah, we haven't forgiven you. It's not mutual.
Okay.
No, we love you too.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't see what's so great about us other than our national parks and the fact that we have New York City. But um,
Right.
because if you've ever seen an American in basically anywhere in Europe or in the UK, we're just basically walking around touching buildings, being like, "How old is this?"
I remember I've got some cousins who live near Sacramento, and the first
Hmm.
time they came to visit me, I was still in high school,
Hmm.
and they came to visit me, and they were like, "Wow, how old's the school?" And I was like, "Well, it was founded in like 1462," and they're like, "Wow, that's older than our country."
Yeah, it's like
It's like,
just like watch our
it's
little
like
heads
damn right.
explode. Yeah, just like running around, just like take me to the oldest cemetery so I can roll around and just
Ugh.
no, I mean I'm a real history buff, history fan. Um, and I remember being in Poland. I got married. Our religious ceremony was in a cathedral in northern Poland,
Wow,
and the cathedral has been there in various forms since the 11th century. So just imagine
wow.
me just standing there, just like like looking at this and just like I shouldn't be here. They're gonna figure out that I'm an American and no, but so like
Just
mind blown.
tell everyone you're Canadian.
No, I can't. Like if you put me under pressure, all I do is tell the truth. They would, if, in the Middle Ages, they wouldn't have even had to torture me. Just like sit me down and just be really nice to me, and I'll just be like, yeah, yeah, here's what's actually going on. Um, but the difference between churches in Europe and churches in America. In American churches, we have basements where we do things like have spaghetti dinners for fundraisers. In Europe's, we just have dead bodies in the
But
basements.
also, you have people who actually go to church still.
Yeah, but
You
they're
actually have practicing worshippers that most
You've got
yeah,
people in
super
Western Europe don't.
churches.
but those are the Protestant sects that have grown up that are very American, and a lot of them scare me because they're very fundamentalist.
Mega
And
churches.
yeah,
I want to go to a mega church.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, that kind of stuff is a little bit scary to me because it speaks to this weird fundamentalism that has always been in the American psyche. Yeah, but okay, so well, now we're going to talk about Dick Wolves. Yay. So
Great transition.
I guess, well, from one ridiculous American thing to another. Um, you want to talk about self-effacing? Yeah. Um, so there was early this year. PAX is the Penny Arcade Expo, which started as an independent um, video game convention a few years ago, and as Penny Arcade has become more prevalent in the video game industry to the point where they really are a force. Like they started as a web comic written by two friends, basically telling jokes, excuse me, about video games, and now they are a legitimate force, to be reckoned with. And so they have now actually, like there's I think the main PAX, which I think is in Seattle, which is where Penny Arcade is headquartered, and then they have PAX East, and this happened at PAX East. Which what city was that in? I think it's in. I want to say it's in Boston, and it is extremely popular. Um, and a few years ago, there was a Penny Arcade comic where they the point they were trying to make was legitimate. That how sort of the morality dynamics within video games are very unrealistic. How have either of you guys read into
Yeah,
this? Am I?
it's the notion that I mean I've never played an MMORPG like World of Warcraft, but the idea that you'll have these little quests you go on to say rescue people from a dungeon,
Hmm.
and the fulfillment of the quest is like rescue 5 people, but the sort of eerie morality is what about the other 95 people that I saw down there? Do I have to rescue them as well? But the quest won't allow you because you fulfilled the quest, and and
Yeah.
and the comic was sort of making fun of that, saying like the sort of this sort of monster, this wolf monster, I guess, from World of Warcraft, would had carried off his last survivor, and some guy was saying, "Oh, please rescue me as well. They torment us daily. They attack us with what I can't remember the actual comic. What was it? They rape us with like wolf penises or something like that.
Yes.
It's weird.
Yes.
But and the guy's like, no, sorry, I've already fulfilled this quest. I'm going to go on to the next one. So yeah, it's obviously making fun of the really weird morality in MMORPGs.
Yeah. I think the actual. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna go into. Yeah.
So
Okay.
what was that? Why was that controversial? Is that what was controversial?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the thing. I don't think that was the controversial
well,
part. That's kind of
it's
it's
actually,
kind of this got this kernel of humor to it that I don't think it's actually mocking rape victims. It's mocking the games.
yeah.
But I think it's everything else that happened after that that was
Yes.
so sort of controversial.
Okay, because I was
It,
like, that doesn't have anything to do with like
yeah,
chicks and
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
been a rolling controversy that actually was made worse not by the original joke, but by the way they have reacted to it over time. So here, let me just quick read off of the Geek Feminism Wiki. In August 2010, Penny Arcade posted a comic strip involving a character who said he was raped by dick wolves as a setup for a punchline about the unusual morality of MMORPG quests, as you just said. Um, and then some of their fans said, that isn't funny. Just making a rape joke in general just is in poor taste. And and then instead of saying, which would have been the appropriate thing to do, instead of saying, yeah, okay, you're right. We were trying to say this, and we, by using a rape joke as a crutch, and that really wasn't appropriate. We apologize, and just let it end.
But why
They
is it I mean, like, I don't understand how taste can be judged appropriate or inappropriate.
But no, okay. I guess the better way to say this is that instead of replying to people who were offended by saying we're sorry, they then and went and made fun of the people who were offended, and basically
Well,
saying
yeah.
that you had no right to be offended.
Well,
Does
no,
Well,
that?
it's
that's
there
stupid.
was
I
a
mean, like, offense is
sorry.
subjective. No, just like tasters, you can't say something's in good or bad taste. Just like you can say something is a priori offensive or inoffensive. It's just like a subjective. You don't have a right to be offended. That's just what happens. It's like I don't like the taste of something.
Okay, but
I think both sides are equally stupid in
yeah,
that case.
but
I th-
this is playing into the larger issue of how women are treated in geek culture. That's the angle we're looking at it from. Is there's this very special kind of hostility that women encounter when they try to either be a part of nerd culture, or object to the way that women are portrayed and treated in these works of fiction.
No,
yeah.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
just think this seems like a very tangential. I mean, this is an
It
insanely tangential way of
it's
getting into it, right?
it started as tangential, but the thing is that it has become the way that the creators have reacted has become kind of like a case in point of what female nerds have to deal with. And you know what? I have to go to the restroom. So if you guys, if let's see here, Duncan, if you could sort of talk a little bit more about this, well,
Okay.
I'll be right back, and you guys can discuss it, and then I'll be right back. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, because this passed me by, Duncan. You have to clue me in what's going on.
Did you look at the actual the little timeline on the thread, or you didn't see that?
No, I didn't see that. Sorry.
Okay, so like
Oh, the thing
as
that
you
you
said,
sent through about different thing. You sent through a timeline which was horrible about different things happening at different like cons and whatnot, which are offensive.
wait, no, I don't think so.
Okay, that's a different thing. Okay.
Yeah. The original thing, as you say, yeah, the original comic is, yeah, it's like it's funny. Like it's not really. I don't think it's as offensive as some people made it out to be. But I think it's more the sort of response of the PAX officials, and their response was to release this really kind of. You might be able to see it on the thread, but it's this really glib, snarky, dismissive comic, and it's positing that I don't know. I don't know. It's just kind of mischaracterizing some of the people's objections, and then this whole. It's kind of. I think part of the problem was if they had just said, "We're sorry if we offended anyone. We're sticking with the comic. We think it's funny, but we're sorry if it offended anyone." If they had just said that, it would have been fine.
Exactly.
But what happened was there was this big campaign, and they started to release T-shirts saying, "I support Dick Wolf," and there was this Twitter account called like Team Rape or something, and a lot of
Team
sort of
rape.
for PAX, and a lot of
That's just
people who were
juvenile, isn't it?
obviously offended to it were sort of saying, this is really offensive. Can you just stop this? Like, yeah, fine, the original comic was funny, but all of this stuff, this idea of commodifying rape in this way is really in poor taste. And a lot of people who maybe have been through this,
And it's not
can't
even
you see how
offensive.
this
It's
would
not
be
even
offensive?
Yeah, and it's not even an anti-girl issue because, guys can be raped too. I mean, just like commodifying rape, full stop, gender neutral is bad.
I think it was more just this sense of, no, we have free speech. We're going to just do whatever we like. You're not going to silence us. And it's just this really defiant attitude and this attempt to, it's like commodify, to actually sell T-shirts supporting this idea of, dick wolves, and it just
Yeah,
seems
but
like so
it's
absurd that they would seize on this issue and try and like run it into the ground and champion it and hold it up as a rallying point.
Oh, I'm
And
back.
a lot
Yeah.
of obviously, a lot of the critics are obviously being abused and things by PAX supporters. So it just created this horrible atmosphere, I think, for PAX Prime, and a lot of women there and a lot of people who maybe have dealt with sexual harassment were really feeling uncomfortable and really disheartened by the way the leadership at PAX was handling things. So I think that's more the issue, and it went for so many years. I think it sort of, they stopped selling the T-shirts after a while, after just overwhelming backlash, and a number of supporters were threatening to get out, and a lot of female critics were really sort of critical of it.
And what
But
about
then
the Team Rape Twitter account? Did anyone apply to Twitter to have that shut down? Or
I don't
because
know.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it's kind of interesting that recently we had a case in the UK that there was a female member of parliament who was being sexually harassed or abused via Twitter. And Twitter's always had a very laissez-faire approach to, well, anyone makes an account for, like you're saying, free speech, do what you want. And if it's a serious threat, you go to the police. And there was such a public outcry in the UK that actually it was the first time that the account involved was disabled and the information given to the cops. And I always find the free speech argument a little bit weak. And I would make a very sort of stupid and trivial analogy to what I was saying on the Star Wars podcast. I mean, of course, George Lucas has the legal right not to allow us to buy the original series in its original form. That doesn't mean that he should do it. And, of course you can publish a comic and you can sell T-shirts that are offensive. And of course I'll go to the stakes defending your right to do that. But that doesn't mean you should do it. And that doesn't mean you can't exercise a bit of humanity and sensitivity, and not act like a total douchebag about it. I mean, to make the joke once, think it's funny, is cool. You realize some people are offended. You can defend your right to free speech and sort of do something again. There's no need to take it to that level, right? I mean, that's just juvenile.
Just pick your battles.
Knowing nothing, that's my judgment.
Yeah.
So did you bring it
I
up
didn't know
to?
that either.
Did you bring the whole story up to date to what happened then at the actual convention?
No, I think I just left it off at that point. I mean, I've only read the little timeline that you gave me. I don't really know much beyond that issue. But if you want to continue from what happened after they canceled the T-shirts.
Yeah, so they canceled the T-shirts, and I think that things just kind of went along for a while, and then at what was it, PAX? This happened to PAX Prime. Oh, there's just too much to keep track of. So, so one of the creators of Penny Arcade, Mike Krahulik, is that how you say his name? Krahulik? Sure. We'll just call him Mike. They were doing a Q&A, and someone in the audience just happened to ask, is there anything you have, regret that you've done over the years vis-a-vis Penny Arcade? No, it wasn't someone in the audience. It was a person interviewing him who was also a staffer for Penny Arcade. That's what it was. And yeah, shocking lack of knowledge. That's just sort of what we do here on Podcast Device and Fire. At any rate, Mike responded by saying, yeah, I never would have pulled the Dick Wolf merchandise. And people cheered this. And
it's like, why is this a movement? Why do people care so passionately about this?
But that's going back. That's going back to what we've been talking about all along. Is how there is this very deep-seated bitterness, that keeping people in their place and thinking that the aggressors are actually the victims.
Yeah. I think it's continually repositioning themselves as victims, as you say. It's this feeling that they're being attacked by the whatever forces. Their little fandom, their geek, or our geek culture is being invaded by these attackers and trying to be conform to their standards, and we don't like that, and we have to fight back. So the victimhood is sort of externalized and used to attack other people who don't deserve it at all.
Yeah. I think.
Forgive me if you've already covered this, but So do you think that that kind of deep-seated insecurity about women encroaching on guys' turf and potentially being accused of being posers and so doing is just restricted to, or do you think it's worse in geek culture than it is in general? Because I see a lot of that in sports as well. That where, you know, in maybe the mid 90s, it became quite popular for girls to start liking soccer in the UK, and then
Right.
you'd get some quite insecure sort of below key kind of football sort of programs and magazines, which like, you know, and again, it was like, oh yeah, the hot chick girl, she's just pretending to like soccer to be all like cool and be down the pub with the guys. But do you think it's somehow worse in geek culture? Do you think there's a certain insecurity in geek culture that lends itself to that victimization
Yeah, I think
turned passive
Yeah.
aggression?
yes, I think
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think there is because, as we previously discussed, geek culture has traditionally been the domain of people who feel themselves to be marginalized and misunderstood, and they're going here to get away from their bullies, from the parents who don't understand them, you know, so they can have a thing that's just for them.
Yeah.
So I think there
And it is
is,
traditionally a boys' club like sports. So it's
yeah,
not, unlike other spheres who do have a bit more of that diversity, geek culture has for so many decades been so dominantly male. So there is this much more of an echo chamber in terms of boys, supporting each other and all those things. So it does feel, I think, more pronounced when a girl transgresses on that space, or they perceive a girl to transgress on that space than in other spheres.
yeah, because even in sports, okay, we have the objectification of cheerleaders, of the female sports journalist who goes down there onto the fields and is looking, you know, like a contestant in Miss Universe instead of like a conventional kind of harried journalist. Um, and but you know, we still have women athletes, you know, whenever we see the Olympics every 4 years, we get reminded that, you know, these women, they're not there to look good. They're there to do their sport, to do the thing that they've been training since they were, you know, often like since little kids. So I think that women do have more of a place in sports. Notice I call it sports, not sport, like you guys do. I don't know why. Um, so they have it more, they have more of a place than traditionally in geek culture, where in geek culture women are very much objectified as objects, as sex objects, as just there to move the narrative along for the male main character. Does that make sense?
Indeed. And how would you rank the kind of Song of Ice and Fire subculture relative to the wider geek culture? Do you think we're worse or better than the general?
I think we're better because of the quality of fan that it attracts.
Yeah, I think it is way more diverse in its in who it sort of includes in terms of men, women, different sexual orientations, different ethnicities. I don't think people care about that at all. I think as we discussed a little bit, there is starting to appear this maybe prejudice against people who haven't been reading the books for the past 13 years, or maybe who've
Yeah.
just come to the show. They see them as a bit more sort of jumping on the bandwagon and then not appreciating the novels in all their, I don't know, richness and complexity. I don't know. Yeah.
Or just the sheer annoyance of having to endure
Yeah.
the new fan and all their effusiveness and excitement. But one thing I do want to point out about the Song of Ice and Fire fandom, now that it does encompass Game of Thrones, is people who are really ticked off by characters like Cersei and Sansa,
Yeah.
and they're completely oblivious to the meta narrative that Josh. I just think okay. That Martin is going for, that George is going for. That was a real Freudian slip, because I was thinking about my ex-boyfriend, whose name is Josh, who actually introduced me to the series back when it was just the books. That there's a Freudian slip, classic. But
So to that extent, and again, if you've discussed this, let me know. We can just cut it out.
go
My
ahead.
question, but so have you already discussed whether you think that Game of Thrones is fundamentally misogynistic and its take? Do you think it takes makes the books? How can I phrase this properly? Is it misogynistic?
I think the books are way more shocking in the way they just depict sexual sort of engagements than the show is. I mean, the show is, compared to other shows, a lot more sexualized. But I think a lot of it is. I'd argue some of it is very gratuitous, but I think it is contributing to a particular narrative and a particular kind of world building. Like there's sort of I don't know, the sort of primal way, this sort of the primal nature of this culture and the way people have sex, like in the Dothraki and all that. I mean, everything is like doggy style, and that contributes to it. And there's sort of the seething rat's nest that is King's Landing is very seedy and sexualized in that manner. So I think it does. Some of it does contribute to the texture of the show.
I think if anything, on the show we are losing a lot of the context and subtext that are driving the meta narrative of what Martin seems to be trying to do, of showing us this profoundly patriarchal, misogynistic world and the way these women, these female characters and male characters have to navigate it and the situations that they're put into. How, for example, I remember when the show first came out, how a lot of people objected to how, Dany's relationship with Drogo started as basically him just raping her constantly to her getting some sexual agency, and then their relationship becoming profoundly sexual. Like going back, I was recently doing some selected rereads in A Game of Thrones, and their relationship is like, that's like their main bond, is their sexual bond. That when Drogo is dead, when she's finally Mercy killed him, she thinks about how she wishes she could just have sex with his body one last time, and that she totally would, except she's all torn up and sore from the stillbirth of her baby. So that right there, like, that's something that I don't think we really get a sense of in the show, is how how the sexual awakening she experienced with him was such a huge part of her character growth, and a huge part of their marriage.
Yeah, I mean, my impression has always been that in the books, Martin is showing misogynistic acts and a misogynistic society in order to make us empathize with some of the female characters and what drives them to certain things and how they survive, and also the toll it takes on the men, and to show us the callousness of war in that time. Whereas sometimes in the show, I feel that it is of itself misogynistic. It's just, tits out for the sake of it. And also, I think that there's a material difference between seeing something written and seeing something visualized on screen, and the power of it, certainly. And I think that before you even mentioned it, that was the scene I was going to mention when I watched the very first episode and saw that final closing shot with Dany basically being effectively raped on her wedding night by her husband. I thought, oh, this is how they're going to do it. They're going to be very simplistic. Women are going to be victims, or they're going to be whores. And, any excuse to get the tits out and to have, the way they've treated Marjorie, I think, is quite interesting in that respect. So,
but isn't the way they depicted on the show a more like in that first episode a more realistic depiction of a patriarchal, misogynistic society? The way that that's what happened if you were married. You would be your consent didn't matter on your wedding night.
Yeah.
Whereas in the books, it kind of escapes that by having her suddenly be into it. I think that does play into the world that Martin has created by not making the easy decision of having her be suddenly into it.
Okay, so let's take
that fear translated over.
I can buy that. I don't think that D&D had that motivation, but I can buy that would be plausible. Let's take a more interesting example, which would be in season 1, I believe, when Littlefinger is schooling Roz in the arts of pleasuring up.
Scene.
I mean, that.
Oh,
I mean, I just
that
don't
scene
understand.
is. Yeah, but that whole scene is about Littlefinger. It's about how he is this puppet master, how he gets off on like controlling people.
You could absolutely have him doing that to the girls. You would not need to show it frontally. You could use a camera shot that showed him exercising power in that way. So many of those scenes.
It's so gratuitous. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm with you. I don't like all the sex. I think it cheapens I totally think it cheapens the show, and it gets all of these people who are so into the nudity. Like that's the only reason they watch it. Like they're so into the titillation of it that they don't actually watch it does. Like I totally agree. I think it cheapens the more interesting aspects of the show.
Yeah, like there are other there are plenty of places in the books where if they wanted to show nudity and gratuity, it's there in the original narrative, and yet they are inserting all this original content, which us as people who have read the books are I think a lot of us are just scratching our heads. Like I'm past the point of being angry, and I'm just scratching my head, just like why did you do that instead of like I have this weird feeling that like we're actually not even going to get this scene with Cersei and her one maid there. I forget her name. She's the Mirish woman, and they're just going to have
Tona.
yes, that we're going to have another random lesbian scene instead of that. Like and it's just like, but guys, it was right there. Like you could. It just it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool. I in about season 2 got to the place where I could separate the show from the books and
Yeah,
enjoy it
same
for what
here.
it is. But you know, I
Yeah.
do think that that's quite harsh and it does a disservice to the books. But I think that there are a couple of HBO shows you could say that of. I mean, Boardwalk Empire would be another example,
Hmm.
and I spend a lot of my time in the movies, and Hollywood is incredibly misogynistic,
Oh
even
yeah.
now. And so I really wonder. I mean, kind of the reason I wanted to participate in this podcast was just to throw out the idea that I have some sympathy with the idea that the geeks are, of their nature insecure and and good at making themselves appear to be the victimized, exploited minority. But
Hmm.
I just wonder if this is a reflection of what happens every day in all walks of life, and that because geek culture is mediated more by social media and websites and forums that are international and global, like the ones that we're involved in, it's a little easier to trace back the arguments, and that most
Yes.
of the time in life, misogyny, indeed, at the macro scale, and something like Hollywood, is just a little bit more hidden. Like it's just a little less visible because the way in which we communicate is mediated by stuff that lives forever. It's Twitter, it's forum.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, I think that that is a very very valid point. That yeah, this is a macrocosm of just how things are in general, and it's just much more intense and much more visible. I'm curious, Bina, what do you do for a living? You're in journalism, or
no, I'm an economist. I work in financial markets.
so why do you have all these pictures of Thor?
Because I'm also a movie reviewer amateur on the
Uh,
side, and
oh,
I
okay,
have like press credentials, but that's just like it's like a hobby that's grown out of all proportion.
okay,
But
all
I
right.
get all the PR stuff. So if you ever need like PR packs from
Mhm.
anyone, let me know.
Yeah, no, in my former pre-motherhood life, I worked in journalism, but in business journalism, so we never got any of the fun PR stuff. It was always, talking to CEOs and things like that about, their latest product launch.
Oh,
It was
cool.
it was never like getting like a really really high DPI image of a really hot actor.
There you go. I did get some very high DPI images of, see, women can be as objectifying of men as men are of women. I got some really hot, sort of high def images of Kit Harington as a gladiator, basically stripped and oiled in a leather thong.
Oh
And
yeah,
believe me,
and what he had.
those went around the office, and I kind of opened it when I was at work on my Gmail account. But I literally,
Hmm.
this is genuinely by mistake, I opened it up, and I have this huge set of 4 screens at work, and like
Yeah.
basically it was like semi-naked Kit Harington all four, and every woman in an open plan office was like, want.
Huh, 4 panels.
Something.
Do you work for a company that rhymes with Schomburg?
No, I don't work for Bloomberg.
Okay, all right. Just had to ask. Um,
No.
yeah, no,
But I do work in the kind of macho environment where the number of screens you have is an indicator of how important you are.
hmm
So,
So you have 4 screens. Good. You're breaking that
yes,
glass ceiling. Good for you. Um,
exactly. That's it. I'm fighting the good fight for the sisterhood.
yes. Um, where are we talking? Okay, we're talking about Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, we got a little
I
off.
feel like I'm derailing everything
No,
since I
it's
joined.
fine. It's fine. I actually kind of want to go back to how before I went for my bathroom break, how you were talking about people being offended, um, and how like it was just a joke and whatnot. The friend who actually got alerted me to the whole Dick Wolf's controversy in the first place because I helped him edit an article that he wrote. Um, how you Bina said that there is a certain amount of yes you can but should you in terms of free speech. So I just kind of wanted to read from from what he wrote really quickly. So, a primer on considerate social citizenship. You don't get to tell people how to take your jokes or how to deal with their trauma because it skews the burden of social responsibility. It's a double standard because you're suddenly asking them to cater to your feelings, painting them as aggressors. Communication is an exchange with responsibilities on both sides. So you're free to say whatever you want. Just don't be surprised if people call you out for being an asshole. The moment the words leave your mouth, they cease to be yours to shape for reception. So I think that
I
that's,
couldn't agree more. I think
yeah,
that's brilliantly articulated.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Love
Yeah. The intent behind your words then mean jack shit if it doesn't manifest in the statement. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's like if your joke wasn't good enough for everyone to agree on what it meant, then that's a problem.
But I love super offensive humor. I love
Yeah.
George Carlin, and I love super offensive humor. And the point is that I don't know. I just feel with people who don't like an offensive joke, what and understand modern social media, why are you pouring fuel on the fire by picking at the people who've done it?
Hmm.
I mean, I kind of feel that the victimized fangirls here needed to back off and just let it die its own death and, as well. Like take responsibility for the fact that it takes two to have a social media fight in a way.
Yeah.
I think
But
that's sorry.
oh, go,
No,
go ahead and finish what you were saying.
no, I'm done. I'm
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the actual people who were offended by this original comic probably have, you know, they can probably be criticized as well. Maybe pick a more, obvious version of sort of example of sexism that can be found in, yeah, like Comic Con or these conventions, like booth babes, for example, rather than this kind of slightly funny joke that isn't really addressing,
Yeah.
sexual harassment and all. Like maybe pick your battles as well from the people who are criticizing it as point of view.
And
But
just refuse to engage. I mean,
yeah. But the thing is that
Yeah, but I mean, if you refuse to engage on every issue and you just let it sort of sit there and fester, like that can be its own form of problem.
well, not if
exactly.
not. I mean, make your initial point, but then when they start printing
Yeah,
up T-shirts, at that point, the fact that that T-shirt is selling and is seen by some juvenile people to be funny is because you're getting pissed off about it. That's what's lending the emotional weight to that T-shirt that makes people want to buy it, and it's. I don't know. Sometimes you just have to be the better person. I suppose it's easier said than done if you have been sexually
yeah.
harassed. God
But
forbid. I guess it's a bit harder to do that.
but
So.
Uh,
I feel like all these things that I'm hearing, pick your battles, don't add fuel to the fire, be the bigger person. These are things that we as women are always told you have to compromise. I'm fucking sick of it. I am
No, it's not
tired.
compromising
Well,
necessarily.
but
I mean,
I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying that these are the messages that we are told of how we're supposed to engage. We're supposed to be the ones who come and be civil, and get the other side gets to call us sluts and whores and cunts. And yet we're supposed to come to them and when we get the same level of mad, then it's like, whoa, you're being irrational. It's like you're the one who's
yeah, but
threatening.
at that point, you're dealing with people of such low intelligence. I just don't understand what you'll achieve. And I'll give you a great Song of Ice and Fire related
Okay.
example. I have a great deal of kind of respect for Elio and Linda and what they've achieved in the fandom and
Hmm.
the resources they've created that help us exist as a fandom are amazing and nothing but time and respect. I look at Linda and I think, my God, you're probably a far more educated person than I am, like an enduring student. And the way she has allowed herself to get embroiled in these like vicious Tumblr assaults, ironically against girls typically, but with deeply charged sexualized language. And that exactly, of course, she has the right to reply and she has the right to call people out, and then they have the right to call her out. But my goodness, I mean, is that really the best use of her time? Is it ultimately damaging her reputation? I don't know.
I
I
I'm
mean,
think
not familiar. Can you tell me a little bit more about these imbroglios that Linda's part of? Because I'm not familiar. I mean, like I know who Elio and Linda are generally, but I'm not really followers of them. So can you guys tell me more about this?
yeah, I mean, I kind of just stumbled on it because I'm not really on Westeros, partly
Hmm.
because it is, I think, one of those fandoms where there is a sort of a hardcore self identified elite of people who
Hmm.
comment on Westeros and don't make it a very friendly place for people who are less expert than they are, or
Yeah,
perceived to be less expert than they are.
I agree with that.
But
That's why I ended
mm,
up on Podcast Device and Fire instead. Yeah,
exactly, we
yeah,
we just
yeah,
friendly
yeah.
peeps,
yeah.
Goldilocks bitches, we're
Hmm.
just nice. But anyway, it kind of whatever. I think it was like when Amin got Tumblr or something. I just like was looking around and I suddenly realized that because Linda has some quite strong opinions, which is her right, about
Hmm.
things like fan fiction and the fact that you shouldn't write fan fiction on Song of Ice and Fire because George apparently doesn't agree with it.
Yeah,
She
he
kind
doesn't.
of has set herself up to be a mediator or an authority on what George would or wouldn't approve of,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
when he hasn't made public statements, which again I find quite similar to the guys in geek fandom who set themselves up as an authority as to how I should be a geek. It's
Mm.
not up to you that I have to know XYZ before I can call myself a geek. And I kind of feel a little bit like that about Linda, but whatever. I mean,
That
and
there
so
was also like,
apparently some girls had been like, it had just descended into. She set up Tumblr accounts basically address some of these people that had been apparently attacking her, but the language is absolutely vile and very personalized, very ad hominem. Sorry, Duncan, you probably know it a little
yeah.
bit better than.
Well, no, the only other thing I would add was there. I think there was like a racial point to it where she was really
Oh yeah.
like the way the Dornish were depicted. Like she
Oh,
didn't see them as being dark skinned, and she was saying no, they're light skinned or something like that. And people were saying no, they're. We're pretty sure Martin depicts them as being sort of Mediterranean based, but I don't know. It was a weird sort of racial thing that I think rubbed a lot
No,
of
I
people
think
the
it
wrong
was
way.
people
I
were
don't know enough about the
saying.
issue, but
Yeah, I think people were saying it'd be nice to have more ethnic minorities on the show, which I've always said. And we're complaining a bit about, sorry, the casting of Dawn. And then she was saying, well, the textual evidence is that Martin wants these guys, has always specified that they're basically kind of Spanishy Latin American, I think. And
oh,
it just
I
got
thought it was
really
the
out
other
of
way
hand.
around.
So then she was accused of being, no, it's definitely that she thinks they are genuinely lighter skinned than some other people.
Okay,
And
sure.
then it got to the point where there were like accusations of racism being thrown around.
Mm.
And then, which of course were uncalled for. But then the arguments just got really ad hominem. And I just think, what I think was interesting is I actually don't care either way, but I think what was interesting is in those conversations, and like I said, I've got a lot of respect and time for Linda, she revealed herself, and maybe she's entitled to because of her relationship to George and co-authoring books with him, but she revealed a certain entitlement and arrogance about the fact that she is going to mediate how people approach the texts. And I found that a little bit grating. Not that I would attack her on a Tumblr,
yeah.
but
I'm
I
reading.
think as you say, it's the kind of the language that they're using that's the real problem. If she would just converse civilly, I think she would always have the upper hand. But if she starts to use that really viral, horrible language where she's just like attacking people and making fun of them and calling them idiots and monkeys and things like that,
Yeah,
that she lowers herself to that level and she becomes,
but then
you can't take her seriously if she talks like that.
yeah.
then
If I
I've read blogs. Sorry, Julia.
I just wanted to jump in here. I am educating myself about this side of Linda that I was not aware of, and I'm frankly pretty disgusted. I found some resources, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. This
Yeah,
is
but it's a tough one because, in a way, she has written posts on her blog, which I think are incredibly persuasive and articulate, where she kind of makes the argument you were making, Julia, that people say to me, well, why do you use that vile language and why do you get involved? But why shouldn't I defend myself? And
yeah.
Yeah, and
people say take
whenever
the higher ground, and why should I shut myself up? And
This
I'm
is
really torn on the whole Linda issue because I can see how if people call you like nasty names and a racist, it's going to affect you and you are going to lash.
but
I mean, we're only human at the end of the day.
but this is not
I
that's
don't think
not.
it's yeah.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think it's about. Sorry, you go. You go.
Yeah, I'm. This is me. I just have to really jump in here really quickly. This actually is not the kind of reaction I'm talking about because she is using the same kind of policing language of putting women down, using words like cunt, lack-witted girl, delusional harpies, delusional. I'm reading off of a list of actual slurs that she's used, by the way.
Yeah, it's very misogynistic language, right?
Yes, it is taking these these tools that are used to keep women down, and this is what could be called women on woman crime, so to speak. and the fact that women who are turned into gatekeepers for the patriarchy. And
Yeah, so it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome. It's almost
yes.
like by positioning yourself, maybe one of the ways in which you can position yourself as
Hmm.
being a kind of an elite geek keeper and mediator of the culture is to
Yeah.
use that same kind of
Yeah.
language and offensive stuff that the men use. And that's just, and it's very analogous. I mean, you know, like I said, I work in the financial services industry, and I think it's the debate that has always happened in investment banks. You know, to get ahead as a woman, do you have to become a man? If it's the big swinging dick alpha males that get to the top, do you need to act like them? So do you pull the ladder up after you as a woman, or do you make it better for other women? So I think it's kind of it's quite similar in a way.
Yeah. So
Um,
I see what side she's come down on. Yeah.
yeah,
I think,
but
I just want to say, when she's appeared on the podcast and her YouTube videos, I think she comes off as a completely different, like really
Yeah.
intelligent, articulate
Yeah.
person. It's just those
What
absolutely,
Tumblr
shocks
posts
me.
that seem so bizarre in their language and their
Yeah.
viciousness. And I
and
don't
it's
think
a
it's
shame,
taking.
right? I
I
have
don't think
so
it's not.
much respect for her analysis when she's not on Tumblr. She's so wise about the books, but it's a
Yeah.
shame.
No.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I've only ever heard her on podcast, and I'm having a very hard time reconciling what I'm reading right now with the other person I've heard, and it's just it's a huge disconnect. And this is I'm like genuinely a little upset over here right now. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no,
That's
no, no,
really
no, no, no.
terrible.
It's not your fault. This is me being like this is what I'm talking about, the way that we women are tricked into doing the dirty work. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a shame.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if if is, as we talked about before, the idea of the internet and I don't know, rather than having to be accountable for your words
Yes,
and being in the
yes.
present, that this idea of the computer screen and being behind it and having that anonymity. I mean, she doesn't have it in that quite that sense that other people do, but it allows this more unfiltered sort of angry persona to sort of push through. You're not really filtering yourself the way you would in like a face-to-face or a voice-to-voice sort of communication.
Yeah, like you would never talk to someone this way if they were sitting right in front of you. You just
It's just
wouldn't.
pure rage. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And I
then
think that's the problem. It's not that she has to pick her battles and to not engage and keep the high ground. It's that she absolutely has a right to defend herself, and
hmm
this goes for anyone. But it's that you don't use language like that. You don't
yeah.
bring yourself down and your cause down to that level of language.
Yeah, why is
You be civil and intelligent and articulated, and that's how you win.
Yeah, I wonder. No, no, I wonder why she's using this very loaded language. Like, why is again? It goes back to our question of where is this anger coming from? What is it that people are trying to protect, and why is it that all these things that are associated with femininity are seen as like the ultimate put downs, the ultimate negativity, black-witted girls,
Absolutely.
little girls, hysterical,
Mm.
uptight feminist. You know, why is it that this is the go-to for her to get angry? Like, why is this her anger language?
Yeah,
I
it's
tell
like
you what, it
pouring
really makes you
petrol on a
sorry.
fire. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like pouring petrol on a flame. If she had just been, just outlined why she has this opinion and just been perfectly civil and sort of humorous about it, nobody would have cared. It would have just ended there and then. But because she's engaged in such a vitriolic way, it's just
Yeah,
brought all of these trolls out of the woodwork to engage with her, and it's just a
yeah.
battle of attrition after
Well,
that.
it doesn't say very positive things about. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of yeah. I feel like this could be a whole different issue to discuss. But uh,
It brings up an interesting kind of economic consequence. You know, I'm a greedy capitalist bastard, and I strongly believe that the way you punish people for doing stuff you don't approve of is you don't, when I say disengage, you don't buy it. And that usually cuts off the oxygen pretty quickly. Like if all these women just didn't attend cons and just refused to participate, then, you know, their buying power would speak volumes.
but but
So,
but
so my
But they
interesting
want to
issue is that
participate.
my
yeah,
point is that
exactly. But can't we create our own? And I think that, you know, a podcast of Ice and Fire is a really interesting example of people have created this world, which by and large, I mean, there's lots of like really healthy disagreement on the forums about sort of interpretations and issues in Song of Ice and Fire. And every now and then a newbie listener troll will come across and say, I really think Kameen sucks or whatever, or I think Mimi sucks. And everyone will just really nicely come back and say, well, of course you have the right to your opinion, but we really like it here.
Yeah.
It's just such a lovely place. Like no one
I know,
ever
it's
writes.
so nice.
I'm always amazed when I see some of those posts come up and they'll get like 50 views before someone will just go in and put a comment. And I always think, oh my God, is it going to be really aggressive? And it's always really lovely and sort of, well, just there are a lot of in-jokes, I agree, but we really love the way that they keep coming up with crackpot theories. It's just like
it's
kill
so
them with
friendly
kindness.
compared to most message boards. It's
Yeah,
really great.
it's so lovely.
Yeah, that tone is set by the host. So tip of the feathered hat to all of the founders and people who have been involved in the podcast Device and Fire over the years, because
Absolutely.
that's the tone comes from the people who start it.
So an interesting question comes with because obviously, not that I want to make this all about Linda, but I think because I'm so interested in the concept of economic consequences. Obviously, I've pre-ordered my World of Ice and Fire, and she's a co-author. And I did at one point think to myself, my God, she's using such language which I really hate and I don't condone, and maybe I shouldn't get it, but I really want it, but I shouldn't get it. I really want it.
It's like, yeah. There are so many examples of that. It's like when you find out that the person behind this thing that you love is secretly horrible, what do you do? What do you do?
Exactly. And it's like, I still listen to Wagner, even though he was a little slimy little shit. So
yeah,
I'm going to get my book. That's my justification.
Yeah.
But it's a real debate you can have.
Well, there's that whole issue right now around the Ender's Game movie where, the man who wrote the source material, the book, is apparently this really awful homophobe, and people not wanting to support the movie for that reason. And then, but then the reminder of, well, it doesn't really support him, and what about all these actors involved? And I think that it's a really good thing that we are having these discussions, that, Bina, that you had that thought. To me, that means that things are moving in a better direction. Maybe not the right direction, because I don't know what the right direction is, but a better direction.
But I think the ultimate conclusion I came to is I'm basically weak. So, for instance, I don't watch Tom Cruise movies because I don't like Scientology. I think it's bad news. But then again, I don't really like Tom Cruise movies, so it's not a
there
great
you go.
But it comes to
that's convenient.
If Tom Cruise were to star in season 4 or 5 of Game of Thrones, I'd be in real trouble.
Yeah. It's like, as long as they stay away from the things that we don't like, it's easy for us to be protesters, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So I cave as soon as it's something I love. I cave.
I think you can separate the art from the artist. I still enjoy, Woody Allen and Roman, what's his name? Polanski movies, but that doesn't mean I support the actual person. But it's like the death of the author. The art exists outside of the author or the personality of the author. Yeah,
I mean, Roman Polanski is a great example because my aforementioned European husband is actually Polish, and in Poland, Roman Polanski is like this national hero, and the prevailing attitude is, okay, so he had sex with a 13-year-old girl, so what? They don't see it as an assault. Yeah.
But I don't even care. I don't care who he is or what he's done. All I care about is the movie.
Yeah.
But I think this is such a good debate. I mean, this could be a whole show. But should we? Because isn't that enabling them? And isn't there a sense in which people like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, and I have to say I love both of their movies, and I'm a fan of both. But isn't there a sense in which they use their fame as a cloak to get away with stuff? And I'll give you a further example. There is a wave of scandals breaking in the United Kingdom where a host of children's TV presenters of the 70s or 80s have been exposed as pedophiles, and either genuine pedophiles or people who are having sex with more sort of 14, 15-year-old girls, but luring them to this was often happening on the BBC, production stage where girls were going back to the dressing room.
And it's not just
the fame was being used as a cloak.
Yeah, and it's not just one or two
everybody
victims.
Knew.
Yeah,
not just the fame.
Everybody knew.
And it was
hundreds, not just the fame, but the money.
Hundreds of victims. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So, the fact that Roman Polanski could flee because he knew he would always have enough work to support his lifestyle wherever he lived, because he knew there'd be enough Hollywood stars to sort of picket for his return. And the way in which the victim in that case was depicted in the press as sort of, well, she was a little teen slut and her mom was pimping her out. And, because obviously they love Roman Polanski, so they're going to make the girl look like a whore. And I totally agree with you, Duncan. I hope you can separate the art from the artist, but sometimes I wonder if in doing so I'm giving myself an easy ride and really failing the issue, because it's just easier than having to deal in a way.
Yeah, it gets to this point where it's like I'm just not having any fun anymore, and these things are meant for entertainment, and it's just such a huge bummer, you know. So it is definitely the classic double-edged sword of, on one hand, I'm glad that we're having these debates. On the other hand, it's like, well, now I can't like this thing anymore. Damn it, you know.
But in a way,
Yeah.
what kind of people are we? If you can watch, like, I don't know, if you can watch a Roman Polanski film and not think about that,
Yes. Yeah.
is that a sort of self-censorship that is quite disturbing? I mean, should you be able to divorce yourself from that fact? So I'm
Well,
taking it
I
to a
don't think
harder.
it's. I
Hmm?
think it's more that I just don't care in general. Like I don't really, even if the director is the greatest person in the world, I just don't really. I'm not into that kind of side of movie making or TV making, I guess, or the sort of personality or cult of personality of the author. I think it's more just yeah, the work is separated. I guess I'm just not that invested in that side of it, whether they're good or bad.
Fair enough. That's a happier place to be, I can assure you.
Yeah, no, it is complicated. I know. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Well, do we want to talk any more about how change can be achieved? I mean, you know, the fact that we're seeing all these bad things. I mean, what should be done about it? You know, if anything, you know, like
I think
how. Hmm?
change will just come gradually, and all of these idiots who are protesting will just be dragged kicking and screaming, and in a couple of years they won't even notice a difference. Like all things where there's a change, people will get really irate about it, about these interlopers, coming into their little private circle. But eventually, nobody will care. They'll just get over it. And I think that's the point. They just have to get over it. And the other thing is, I think one possible change is maybe people becoming more accountable on the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
This idea of trolling is so prevalent and was so prevalent with the Anita Sarkeesian sort of campaign of attack. But I don't know, I guess we're kind of in the Wild West, I guess, with the internet. Nobody's accountable. Everyone has anonymity. I can't even say that word, anonymousness. But eventually, I
Anonymity.
guess,
Yeah.
anonymity, yes, will eventually, yeah, I guess have more on the internet. Will have more of an account or an avatar that we'll have to be accountable to or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's one possible way of, mediating a lot of this hatred on the internet and a lot of this trolling on the internet. But as for comic book conventions and things like that, the men are just going to have to get over it. It's happening one way or the other. They're just going to have to grow up.
I almost feel like it's happened. I mean, I think there's a very interesting. I remember being taught social history at school, and one of my teachers said, "Well, the reason why the greatest snobbery is actually with the lower middle classes is because they have the most to lose. They're closest to the working classes, whereas the upper classes actually don't have any snobbery, don't give a shit." And I think there's a kind of a weird, bizarre analogy to this geek culture thing that, let's be honest, geek culture is no longer geek culture. San Diego Comic-Con is basically a Hollywood affair now. It's
Yep.
nothing to do
Yep.
with geek culture.
Definitely, yeah.
So the geeks are right to feel insecure. They are the low middle class that are under attack and feel that they're slipping away in they are no longer the people who mediate culture. You know, what Marvel decides to do in putting a show on Netflix has nothing to do with whether geeks are buying comics. It has to do with how much money the Avengers film takes and what happens in the multiplexes. So it's out. Their power has gone. And so, of course, in the death throes, people are much more dangerous. You know, a cornered animal is more dangerous. But ultimately, I think a lot of that elite power has gone. And, I think the same is true in A Song of Ice and Fire. We hopefully appreciate and love the books and have a rich and deep understanding of them. But ultimately, Game of Thrones is now the dominant medium through which people know that world. And we can sit here and be all like elitist and, oh, well, you don't get all the meta narrative. But fundamentally, it's too late. The genie's out of the box. And just be happy. If 1% of those people go and read the books and get them, just be happy for that. And that is basically exactly what Mimi said in a post recently on the forums. And I endorse that. So
Yeah,
I think the game's over, as Duncan said. The game is up, really, and within 10 years, this will seem quite quaint. I hope.
actually, this is a really good example of what you just said, bringing up Mimi. I didn't know what did she say in that post specifically, that to just get over it and be happy for the people who do want to read the books.
Well, I think she just said that someone was having a go at her for being anti-show or ranting about the show, and she said, I don't particularly enjoy being around people, and I've got lots of friends who watch just the show or came to who just watch the show, and I find it boring to sort of when they don't get stuff. But at the end of the day, lots of podcast of Ice and Fire listeners came to the books through the show, including she mentioned Linecom, like Augustine, and have as rich a knowledge of those books as anyone who read them 10 years before the show. So, and she just made the point, like, if a few of those people go on to read the books, it's all good. It's all happy. And Game of Thrones can exist, and people can enjoy that and whatever, and I'll carry on enjoying the books.
Well, that's good because her attitude used to be a lot more hostile, just like even like 2 years ago. I remember listening to a couple episodes where she was really hostile about the new uh, uh, fans. So the fact that she herself has changed, I mean, like
Well, I
that's
don't
just
want to paraphrase. I mean, like,
yeah.
I'm probably, she'll probably is like, no, that's not what I meant at all. That's not what I
Yeah.
said. You're getting it wrong. But I think
Yeah, I
it's
think
just,
she's more annoyed by all these sort of new fans, I guess, this new culture that's surrounded
tough
it.
titties.
Maybe the show itself. Well, her review of the second season of the show actually wasn't that bad. Like, she sort of enjoyed big parts of it. So I don't think it's the show so much as all of these sort of people who have come lately. She's loved these books for so long.
yeah, I don't like
these new
when I
people
go
have
to
come.
work and like someone's describing, like literally calling Danny Khaleesi because that's what they think her name is. I
Yeah.
mean, but like you gotta let it roll. I mean,
Yeah.
like in life, if you get annoyed at every little thing like that, I mean, Jesus Christ, you're gonna be on like Valium for the rest of your days. Let it
Just be
roll.
happy. Just be happy that there's more people to enjoy what you enjoy.
If all
Exactly.
these people didn't watch the show would be cancelled. If the show were cancelled, George R. R. Martin would not be writing to keep ahead of the show. I think because of the show,
Yeah.
we'll probably get Winds of Winter a year ahead of when we would have done otherwise. So,
Oh,
God
that's a
bless
good
the
point.
show and all who sail in her.
It's a fresher
That's what I
cooker.
say. Exactly. Although, did you see that interview he gave with the Sydney Morning Herald where he's like, I know the fans want the book, but I wish they'd just get off my back once in a while.
Oh my. Yeah. Well, I like that he's in Australia, but he needs to get back and get started. Hopefully, he's writing on his tour. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go see him in Melbourne next week.
Oh, neat.
When's he in
Yeah, I'm
Melbourne?
gonna go. On the 14th. Or no, I think 12th till the 14th. I'm going to a signing on
man.
the 14th. Yeah.
It's just before I'm there. That sucks.
Yeah.
But Osmoot, we're going to have an Osmoot.
That's right. On the 28th, I think. No, the Friday or whatever the date is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we should pimp that out in case
so-
any Australians are listening.
Yeah.
Friday 28th, Melbourne.
Anyone in Melbourne or within driving distance of Melbourne, definitely come.
But if anyone's in Perth, Brisbane, or Adelaide, PM me. I'm willing to have an offshoot Osmoot in any of those three cities during the test matches. There you go.
So is that going to be a gathering of Australian Song of Ice and Fire fans, I'm assuming? Or is this...
Hope so. I think Jessica's going to be there, and I don't know, how do you pronounce, is it TSR GIS or GIS?
I'm not sure.
How do you pronounce this for him?
Sargus? I don't know. I don't know his actual name.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah, he'll be
I always
there.
pick online names that cannot be mispronounced.
Indeed. Although Jedi Whiteheart used to call me Biner, so there you go.
You also said test match, so it's like this is related to cricket somehow too. So I am way out of my depth.
I know nothing about cricket, so I can't speak to that.
He's just pretending he doesn't know anything about cricket because England are beating Australia at the moment.
Are they?
Oh, she
okay.
called you out. She called you out. Ooh, you know how
I don't
Shots
believe-
fired. Shots
I don't
fired.
believe any Australian men don't know about cricket.
you know how we
But,
react to that sort of thing in America? We bomb people. What are you gonna do?
The flag's been raised.
The fact's been raised.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if there's anything else you guys really want to say about this because I'm sort of running up against my time that I have allotted to this.
Well,
Um,
thank you very much for letting me jump on late and probably asking you questions you'd already answered.
no,
So
no,
I'm
no, no.
sorry.
You
No, not at
brought a
all.
lot of interesting points to the conversation and brought up a lot of things. Like now I know that Linda is a secret potty mouth. Oh my. um,
I,
yeah.
I, I- I'd like to plug the Anita Sarkeesian Feminist Frequency sort of series of YouTube videos. Kind of interesting if you want to have a look at representations of women in television and movies and video games. I mean, you might not agree with all of it, but it's kind of interesting introduction into the conversation, I think.
Yeah, and also, Bina,
Cool.
if you could mention the whole Osmoot thing again, just because I want people to know about that.
Okay, so there's an Osmoot, which is Australian version of Cockney Moot. It's going to happen on Friday, November the 28th in Melbourne, location TBD. Attendees are going to be myself in full England cricket fangirl kit, Valkyris, Jessica, and however one pronounces TSR or GIS, and hopefully
Sargus.
some other sort of closet listeners in Melbourne that we can drag up. So please,
Definitely. Yeah.
there's a string on the boards, or you can PM me, Bina007, and hopefully we can all meet up. It'd be cool.
That sounds great. You guys can drink warm beer and watch cricket.
Actually, it's
That's
Australia. We'll
no
drink cold beer.
cold
you.
beer, not warm beer. That's
Oh,
Britain.
okay. Shocking lack of knowledge.
We're going to be drinking VB, right, Duncan?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
That's
VB.
basically all English people think all Australian men are basically like Shane Warne and just drink like 57 cans of VB or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah. VB, that's the Victorian, yeah, but it's different for each
Okay.
state.
Okay,
All
cool.
right. Well, I'm gonna try to get this done over the weekend. My poor husband actually just he had a bout of strep throat the other week, and I don't think they gave him strong enough antibiotics, and he just texted me that his throat's starting to hurt again. So I might be doing double duty of caring for both my infant son and my husband this weekend. So we'll see how much free time I have to do the editing, but I'll get this out as soon as I can.
Cool.
And
Thank you for arranging. It's been
okay,
really fun.
no
Awesome.
problem. And thank
Thank
both of
you.
you. And talk to you probably for another podcast sometime in the future.
Super.
Definitely.
Bye.
Okay, bye bye.